Hello, and welcome back to our discussion about authority. We're just going to dive right into this part two. So we were talking about the kind of the difference between you were talking about like fruit being judged, the judging by the fruit. So the question I guess I was left with was, when if somebody's in a high talent position, right? Like they can play every instrument out there, or they can, they have the best, the very solid understanding and teaching or whatever. Is that the same thing as the fruit that they're being, like that we're judging by? Because if I guess I feel like the fruit that you're talking about is more of a character fruit, but I see how it could be really easily confused for a talent fruit. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Is that
That's my
want me to
question. Yeah.
jump
So
in?
yeah.
Okay. The talent would be the result of a person's abilities, which doesn't necessarily automatic. There's no automatic that says that it's going to be God valuable. The fruit of an individual that is, let's say, highly talented still rests on his ability to be self-controlled, to be loving with agape love, to be willing to be humble and pure and wholesome, and evidence all of his actions under those talents with, I would say, almost a Holy Spirit precision to submit everything he does as a glory unto God. Because really, your actions and words are what we're judgeable for in our jurisdiction. And I think I probably talked about it before. I try to describe jurisdiction as an ever-changing garden bed with a rock wall around it. And that fluctuates, it changes. God keeps score with that. That's what we'll be ultimately judged for. And so that change that he continues to make but protects, if we stay within sight of it, it will keep us, protect us, help us, and grow us, and actually will become the resource for maybe, let's say, a larger jurisdiction. But part of that is a conscious effort. David was incredible at this, King David. He always made the Lord his resource for his path. And only a few times did he do it wrong, and every time he did it wrong, he paid for it.
Yeah.
But the Lord told Solomon, after David had passed from this planet, the Lord advised Solomon in one of his dreams to make sure that he had a heart like his old man. And he said, which was perfect to me, which is astounding. We're not called to be sinless. God already knows that that's not possible on this planet. We can even have a good week, but he knows that. But it's our conscious effort to become more and more like Jesus, to become more and more like the heroes of the faith, to represent the ones that are the best in the Lord's eyes are the ones that always chased his will, his plan, and were not offended by it. It might have been inconvenient, it might have been hard, but the fruit of a talented musician would still he would capable of doing amazing things, and the inclination or the temptation would be, well, I'm doing this as a free will unto God because after all, he blessed me. But a person who is humble would say, Lord, how can I use these talents to best honor and glorify your name?
Yeah.
That would be the fruit, and there would be difference in it. You could be in the same service, and both of them would be maybe melodic, they would be beautiful to hear, but one is more like the appearance in the world, where see me. The other one would be one in which his eyes would not be upon himself. His eyes would be upon the Lord, and you would know the difference. You just can track that.
Yeah.
And the thing
You
is
enter
that,
into the presence. I mean, because you're worshiping the Father
yes.
versus, it's a very different.
it's something for us to consider the fact, and quite often it happens, and it's a side. Let's say that it's a side observation, that quite often ministry in music and worship is something that actually is geared to satisfy and please us. I hate to say it that way, but quite often that's the case, because you will see a congregation that will be stirred up easily by a favorite song of the time,
Yeah.
and it'll just produce all kinds of goosebumps. But the difference is when that same music is suddenly given to the Lord, and it can suddenly divert for a second, or it can go to a new place, or all of a sudden it becomes an unscheduled hymn before the Lord. All of a sudden it's changed. But see, in order for this to work, the presence of the Lord is the accommodation to the submission. So when he shows up, that's everything to the one who wants to honor and glorify him.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you could have a person who can't recognize the presence of God, even though they're more talented than someone else.
Yeah.
But that's the way it works.
Yeah.
And so talent may not be a friend; it may be an enemy.
Yeah. I think that honestly is frequently the case, right? Because there's a lot of people will, and even especially in ministry, right? Like they'll view that their talent as the basis for why they got the job in the first place, or why they're in that position in the first place. Again, forgetting that it's the Lord that was the one that raises us up and lowers us. But if I have my position because I'm the most talented musician on the worship team or whatever, like if I become the worship pastor, say, Pastor Madison, I had no designs on your job, just to throw that out there. But if that were right, so
proper disclaimers.
That's just an easy way to So if that were the case, because my talent was so high, then the tendency is to then want to exert that control, to be in competition. Like, I don't want anybody else to take my position by being more talented than I am. So then they put those control measures in place to limit how successful anybody else is around them, versus the way that the kingdom authority works is to empower and to raise up those people around us, right? And so if I'm walking in the authority in that, coupled with the talent, right, then I'm training other people, I'm showing them how to do it better, I'm raising them up, and I'm hoping that they even surpass me, because I want the whole experience to be better and for us to glorify God more effectively, which is a very different perspective.
Sure. It's not the worldly perspective by
Right.
any means, because you want to hold on to everything you have.
Yeah.
I guess, up in Big Rapids, this has come as a shock. We still don't have live music. And that's because all of our live music went with a number of hurt folks left the building. So we don't have the luxury of that. But if I blindfolded you and I walked you into our sanctuary, you would notice that the music was from maybe some of the people actually wrote the music, because that's what we're bringing in. But if I didn't tell you that, and I didn't show you, and you came into our sanctuary, you would discover that the people they're not even noticing that anymore. At first they did. It was hard. They thought, but now they're God chasers. And the presence of the Lord comes into that place, and it's not even based upon the notes. It's based upon the drawing of a heart seeking God. And that's what they're doing. And they, it's incredible. I've watched it over and over again, week after week, that we don't have what other churches have.
Yeah.
But that doesn't stop the flow or the seeking. It doesn't. It's like they came to do this thing. Well, we understand too. What is it that pleases God? faith pleases God.
Yeah.
And so maybe, if anything, we have encouraged them to realize that we don't even naturally chase God in worship, naturally pleasing.
Yeah. We're waiting for him to come down and encounter us.
So we're pursuing the only thing that is most important in our lives, and that's what they are doing. And they're adding their faith that he's a rewarder of that diligence, and he shows up. And I can't tell you how many times people have come into the room and say, "Well, you don't have anybody playing any live music, and yet God is here."
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's because the hearts have chased him, and they've chased him humbly, and so yeah, and the fruit of that is that it's attractive, it's becoming an expectation, and who knows what's going to happen when we actually have live and talent back in the room. Because God is right now the major focus. And I'm not saying anything by that. Again, we did the disclaimer. I mean the disclaimer. It's beautiful to have that available, but God responds to what we cannot see.
Yeah.
And that to him is all we want to do is to satisfy him and make him happy and be led by him and to chase him the way he would want and designed us to chase him, and then I don't worry about the rest.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah, so it's and it's fun.
Yeah.
Isn't it supposed to be fun? Isn't that supposed to be? Well, maybe I should say a joy. Maybe that would be the way to put it.
No, I mean, it really is so much more. You have so much more freedom and expression in that when it's not you trying to make everything, like trying to control the experience, right? Versus like just being submitted to what the Lord is doing and seeking him and asking him to be there. And, like it is a very different, you're not under this weight of performance anymore.
Yeah.
It's like the freedom and glory of like, what the Lord is like. We just get to partner and be there for it. We get to like be as much of a blessing to him as he is to us. Like I want to, I want to bless his, like, be that sweet fragrance that, the things like offering it up to him.
And my guess is that if you only worship him on the Sunday with the professional talent, you're content with something that's foreign to him. And I mean, that's a speculation. That's not a doctrine by any means, but he created each of us for his pleasure. He didn't create us to be pleasured by our own perception of who he should be.
Wow.
You know what? I can't even imagine him. But if I try to do that, his Spirit will have to teach me where I'm wrong. Because he isn't a man. He doesn't think like a man. He doesn't talk like a man. And there's no reason for him to be. But remember, the whole reason we lost Eden was on his likeness. But we're still trying to learn his likeness his way.
Yeah.
I hope.
Yeah.
I hope.
I do too. Yeah. 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 Because when we, there's so much that he has designed for us to be able to walk in, and it's not, we're talking about the desperation earlier. So much of the time we're just trying to like answer these basic questions about ourselves. Like, who am I? What's my unique contribution? What is it that like makes me different and unique, and what's my identity? And he's like, listen, like I wrote a book of life over you before the foundations of the world were laid. I didn't predestine every action that you took, but I did predestine all the gifts that I had in store for you, all the things that I wanted to give you, all the blessings that I have for you, right? Like the life that I want to breathe over you. I carefully formed you in your mother's womb, right? Like there's so much that he has, and we get to discover and to step into and to walk in But when we try and, like the prodigal son, take the inheritance for ourselves and run off and do with it what we want, we step out of that authority, out of that jurisdiction. I was talking. There was a teaching I was hearing the other day about this the a man came to the speaker that I was listening to and said that like I feel like I really understand like what the Lord's called me to, like he's called me to this kind of people group and to this, to preach this specific message, and like I have all these characteristics of my jurisdiction. But every time I keep trying to go to, like, I feel like I'm called to these people in this people group in the Middle East. And he's like, I've been, gotten all these plane tickets, and they keep the plane gets canceled. The blizzard happens, like all these things. I haven't been able to make it over there. It's been 2 years I've been trying to make this happen. And I have no, like, I can't figure this out. What's the deal? Like, I know this is what the Lord has called me to. And he says, okay, but are you ministering to that people group where you're at? And he's like, well, yeah, I live in the highest concentration of that people group outside of the Middle East. And we're having amazing revivals, and things are changing and transforming left and right. And the Lord keeps showing up, and it's so beautiful. And that's why I want to go over there so bad, because I want to help, And he's like, okay, but if the Lord has called you into this place, that's like the jurisdiction that you have is, you're very clearly walking in that now. Sometimes it's, the grass is greener on the other side. We're always looking for bigger and better, but it's letting the Lord define actually what it is he's calling us to in this season that we're in. And he may wind up going to the Middle East at some point, but
sure.
For right now, this is where the Lord has him. And I think it's so important for us to be even seeking the Lord in what it is that he's wanting us to do, where,
I'm going to say something that a lot of people probably get uncomfortable with, and just send all your emails to Chris Cook. But in the Weiss translation in Acts, Paul has been mandated by the Lord to go represent him. And then in his first going out in his travels, and at that particular time, he must have believed that he was supposed to minister to anybody, but for some reason, it wasn't working. And in the Weiss translation, I think it's Acts 14 or so. I could be wrong. It could be off a chapter or two. In the Weiss, it says that Paul was trying to find where he was supposed to minister to by trial and error. Now, wait a second. You got Paul, who's anointed by God, led by the Holy Spirit,
all these places, yeah.
And he's trying to find where he's supposed to go, because it's not automatic. Because remember, the predestination is time and place. We're here now. We're here now. Yeah. Wherever here is supposed to be, that's where we got to get, and we've got to do whatever we're supposed to do now. And that's a daily event. That's not in a year, that's today. And then it says, in trying to find, he found that he was not supposed to be where he was, and he was trying to find where he was. And remember, what guided him was a dream. Remember the details of that dream. It was a man dressed up as a Macedonian. And what is interesting, it wasn't the voice of the Lord that told him to go. Now, this is where send your cards and letters to Chris. because there was not a God voice, and there was not a God sign, except that the individual that was representing that dream was pleading. And then it's got this amazing little word in the Weiss, and it says, Paul concluded. He came to the realization, a mixture of mind and spirit, that was what he was supposed to do. Led by the Spirit of God, called by Jesus Christ himself to represent to the Gentiles and the Jews the Savior. And here we go, and Paul concluded. I would say that quite often we don't know exactly where we're supposed to be. And I would say that often we haven't heard the clearest word.
Yeah.
But I also know this, that the whole reason that Paul was able to hear was because he was moving. Even in a step, you get the opportunity to steer.
Yeah.
But if you're standing there and you're waiting for God to tell you the direction, he can't essentially steer you.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to make mistakes. We don't see it clearly. We don't have access to all the information. That's the faith portion.
Yeah, stepping out in faith gives you that motion to be led and directed in it. Yeah.
So that means that sometimes even leaders that we look up to are trying to find their way. I've been looking, and I still haven't found any perfect people yet.
What?
No, I'm serious. I haven't found a perfect people. And I haven't been perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been able to make an incredible amount of mistakes. And I understand that. And I'm on this track to eventually maybe, well, I won't be perfected till the other side of this thing. I just got to hang on tight, and I got to keep doing, and I've got to take the time I have in the space where I have been planted to do the most I can do and influence the most I can, but not for me.
Yeah.
So there you go. I don't know. Cards and letters, Chris Cook, Mount Hope Church.
Forward those right to Big Rapids. Yeah. No, that's really good. Thank you for sharing that perspective on it.
It's not you don't hear it very often, but God, he's given you a personality. He's given me a personality. And I'm pretty sure that everybody that we're talking to or might be listening to this has gotten a personality from him. And what's really crazy is that Jesus would do anything he's asking us to do so much better than we could do it. And yet he depends on us to be his hands and his feet and his mouthpiece. And I think that makes God, okay, another card and letter thing time moment. That makes God kind of crazy because he's the most effective at this, and yet he doesn't want to do it without us, and he wants to include us. So I would maintain that even in our use of faith to believe that we could be used and to rely on him, he uses more faith to raise us up into the position that he's intended us to have.
Wow.
And I think he uses a whole lot more faith, and he knows where we're going to go. And he tries to prevent the evil choices, the stupid choices. He tries to prevent that, to help us. And because he wants us ultimately, he loves us, he wants us to win, he wants to restore, redeem, and reshape, and allow his identity to become not foreign, but completely inside of us in our fabric.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to let that roll. As inconvenient as it is, I'm willing to let that roll.
It's really good. Yeah, it's amazing, how much like the identity he's given us as his sons and daughters, the things that he declares over us, like that is, the basis for so much of the authority, so much of the things that he's called us to do is, that he does trust us. He does, and even Abraham, who he put to sleep and covenanted with himself on behalf of, because he knew that he wasn't going to be able to uphold his side of the bargain, right? Like, and now we have the Holy Spirit and Jesus who live inside us and are upon us, like, there's still a level of covenant with himself, I think, that he's, fully invested in our success,
My argument Well, it's not an argument, but my statement is the only thing that we can possibly bring into the covenant of any value is one single thing, and it's not our talents, it's not our will, it's not our looks, it's not any of that. It's just our yes. That's all we've got. And you know what? He even knows that that's not valuable. He knows that we're not going to be able to pull that off without him.
Yeah.
So that really does make it a one-sided covenant with very little requirements or needs, but the yes is imperative.
Yeah.
And if I say no, I don't even get the covenant then. So,
and yet he treasures being with us so much. It's, doing things with us so, it's so highly. It's amazing the way that the Lord interacts with us is beautiful.
Yep.
So. Well, that's all the time we have. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.